whatever they said to John Morant, he needed to hear it. He sucked. All right, welcome on to our first ever NBA Cup night that was exclusively on Amazon Prime, at least on the national games. And we got an awesome night of basketball. West Coast was probably the best. A lot of interesting stuff to talk about coming up here. Let's begin, though, with what took place in Portland. Comeback win. Denver blows a second straight game late that they were in control of. Also did this against Golden State. And, of course, with Nikola Jokic, they've long been one of the league's best clutch teams. So we'll talk about the end of the game, of course, but what were some of your main takeaways during this contest?
I was very excited for Blazers Nuggets, even beyond the NBA Cup implications, just because these teams have kind of interesting strengths and weaknesses against each other. One of my big questions was the Nuggets are a flawed but still somewhat capable defensive team. How was Portland going to generate offense? And one of the big things they did was both teams got to the free throw line a lot. Each team had 31 free throw attempts in this game. Denver made more of them than Portland did. And there were a lot of Blazers who deserve credit for that. I mean, Avdia had some big free throws late. Jerami Grant, former Nugget, had some bigger ones late. And so I thought that for Portland, like, it was that core question, they make life hard. They already beat the Warriors in Portland this year. So they make life hard on good teams, but could they score enough? Because we know they can defend. And I think broadly speaking, this wasn't like a tour de force offensively, but I thought they were good enough to win.
Yeah, the Blazers are a team that assaults the rim. The Nuggets try to deny penetration, but once you get there, you will be able to score on them. And we saw that late. To me, the most interesting thing here was the Blazers well outscored Denver in the half-court offense. First shot half-court offense, 0.99 points per play for the Blazers. And then Denver had 0.81, where Denver made it up and were in control through a lot of the game was in transitions. In transition, Denver had 37 points. Blazers had 27, but they got a bunch of them late, interestingly enough. And that was my other biggest takeaway, is that the Blazers were really able to grind to a halt this vaunted Nugget offense. And Jamal Murray looked pretty good, 8 of 11 on 2-pointers. 22 points. He only played 34 minutes. David Alvin is definitely not trying to run dudes into the ground, even given the important nature, the stakes of this game. And so he looked pretty good going one-on-one, getting the spots. Like that's really the most positive thing about this early season for the Nuggets. However, there are a few things that came back from as a theme recently that I didn't love. Number one, Christian Braun continued to be totally ineffective in half-court offense. 0 of 3 on threes. He took one late that he ended up missing. That was a huge shot that could have put the game away. They were just totally not guarding him. He wasn't taking the shots at all. And then I thought he even on the other end got taken advantage of by Denny Avdia and Jerami Grant at times going one-on-one, which is not supposed to happen against ostensibly your best perimeter defender, because again, they count on him to, like, these are not, unbelievable creators. We're not talking about Steph Curry. Like, that's someone that in theory Christian Braun should be able to handle reasonably well without a ton of help. So that was one thing. You want to react to that at all with Brown before I move on?
Well, I agree with you. Point. I mean, so for Brown, it was a challenge on both ends of the floor. I mean, you have this idea that you live with his offense for his defense, and that's unusual for a perimeter player, but it can happen. And ideally, he hits his open threes, which he did not in this one. Was 0 for 3, and maybe some of that is that he's.
And do you agree with me that he passed up shots?
Oh yeah, he absolutely did. And they were the ball didn't find. I didn't think it was like in the comical levels, like like Stephon Castle at UConn, like that type of level. But there were a few times where he should have taken it and didn't.
Next point that I had is just the overall Nuggets half-court offense, and they did a very good job of not letting Nikola Jokic get the ball in the post. Nikola Jokic basically hasn't been posting up at all this year. He's either been being a hub up top, and he actually his triple-double streak ended, which we can talk more about too. Being a hub up top, running some pick and roll with Jamal Murray, obviously very effective. But he has not really been posting up, forcing double teams. And I don't think he looks like he's in the best shape right now. And you got to work hard to post up. And teams have decided, no, we're not going to let him get the ball when he posts up, because then we have to double team, and he's so low to the basket, you're going to give up layups because he's going to pass guys open under the rim. And they have these great finishers like Brown and Aaron Gordon, and now they also have Cam Johnson out there as well, and they have a little more shooting even in some of the backup lines. So Jokic is just not working that hard offensively as a scorer. And again, only 7 of 10 from the field in this one, and 9 assists. And then overall, the Nuggets, 19 assists, and they were 6 of 25 from 3. And Tim Hardaway Jr., like I saw some people on Twitter like pining for Tim Hardaway Jr. It's like, oh, you sweet summer child, if you think that's going to be your long-term solution to get more Tim Hardaway Jr. in your life. He was 3 of 10 in this game.
Well, and
so,
I think that ties in with something. I don't know if we're going to go possession by possession, but a takeaway for me in the later part of the game, but before Portland ended up taking the lead and winning, was I thought that Denver was hitting a lot of shots late, but I thought they were tougher than usual looks. Like they were, Jamal Murray shot making, the preposterous one that Aaron Gordon hit at one, which seemed like it was going to potentially seal the game. Jokic had a couple of those, and so it's like, oh man, they're not getting anything easy. And that's a mix of some concern for the Nuggets, but also praise for the Trailblazers, whose defense is so hard to play against.
Well, and that was, I mean, as we're talking about the Nuggets offense, the Blazers defense was really good. Their plan was good. I thought Tiago Splitter changed the game by taking out his center. Donovan Clingan had an offensive stroke. I think that also really helped them to run more as well. But they went to a switching group. They had Jerami Grant out there. For a while, they even had Chris Murray out there. So no Sharp, no Donovan Clingan out there. And so they were able to switch everything. Then they were fronting Jokic and they had attempted post-ups. Yeah.
They had a 1-2-2 zone for a little while, too. That worked reasonably well.
Yeah. So, and they had Kamara, Denny Avdia, Jrue Holiday, of course, who, as much as we criticize that, he's been pretty good so far in the early going. He had 12 assists in this one. I mentioned Chris Murray, who's very good defensively and can attack the basket, but his shot's pretty busted. And they even got a little bit of Rob Williams, though he wasn't in the closing group here. So it was definitely a good move to just make Denver's life difficult. And they didn't get the ball, right? Cam Johnson continuing to just not really be involved. 6 field goal attempts in 30 minutes. Now, he had that shoulder issue that he missed a game and then was questionable, but he's just not getting touches. He's not getting involved. The one time they actually did get him the ball late, they did it as an out of bounds when they knew the Blazers would try to trap him in the corner when they attempted to run a pick and roll, and that actually released Jokic to the basket, and he was able to pick up an and one there in the last 5 minutes. That was probably their only good offensive process, I would say. Maybe the Brown 3 was the other one. So the combination of not having enough shooting so you can get away with fronting Jokic not being in the greatest shape, not working that hard. So the fact that Jamal Murray is playing well right now, that's very, very encouraging. But I do think some of the other things, Aaron Gordon only got up 2 threes in this game, 25 total threes. Yeah,
that's what I was going to mention. 25 total threes, but also the 3 non-Jokic Murray starters. I'm more concerned about the 8 attempts than the 1 make, because they'll make more than that. I mean, Cam Johnson took 3, Brown, all that.
Yeah, so that's a total 3-pointers, 8 attempts
for Gordon, Johnson, and Brown.
Jokic, Murray, yeah. And those guys, I mean, they're all 40% 3-point shooters. Brown was passing up shots. Gordon and Johnson will take them. They just weren't necessarily generating them that much.
And the Blazers do a great job covering ground. They do a great job making teams work. And they only generated, I guess they had 11 steals. It felt like in an earlier part of the game that they weren't generating a ton of steals. They did get them at different points of the game. Chris Murray actually was active in that front. And so I was very impressed with Portland's defense. And I thought this was going to be, like you talked about, we had this discussion in preview of like basically the West Group C is so wild because I said that all 5 teams could win, and you said Portland probably can't win the group, but they can beat any individual team. And I was like, oh, I thought this for a long time. I thought this game was going to be really good evidence of that. Like they can give everyone a hard game, but they just don't quite have enough. And then they did have enough.
Yeah, they did. So I do want to talk a little bit about the end of the game after we hit on some of the Portland performances. Yeah, Drew Holiday, I mean, it hasn't been great. I don't know that he's going to be an efficient 2-point scorer throughout the course of the season, but looks like actually they bumped him up in assists. He now has 13 assists for this game, and he had 2 steals. Like he is playing 32 minutes and also still pressuring full court, and he can switch on to anybody. And he played point guard for most of this game. The Blake Wesley got hurt with a foot issue in the first half, which I'm a little bit worried about because I couldn't really see what happened. Like he just tried to plant and go up for a jumper, and then all of a sudden his foot, and he didn't even seem to be in like crazy pain, but he just like, I don't know if he just like broke his foot or something. It's really weird. So they had Shaedon Sharpe then as the backup point guard, and he really ate at the expense of Jonas Valanciunas. So this is some stuff that we got in beta on the new site. Jonas Valanciunas on the floor. He and Shaedon Sharpe matched up for 9 minutes and 42 seconds, and Shaedon Sharpe had 15 points, 5 of 6 from the field, and drew 4 fouls, had 1 assist, and 0 turnovers during that period. And Sharpe played point guard basically that entire time and was operating largely in pick and roll up top against a drop coverage, finding loads of space and attacking. Let me see what the shot chart looked like during those minutes. Yeah, Sharpe was 4 of 6. Excuse me. The team was 4 of 6 from 3 during that, and Sharpe was 3 of 3 on threes, all of which he was taking off the dribble up top. And then he also had another and one where he snaked the pick and roll and got to the left elbow and got fouled.
Nate, the bigger thing of those splits for me is that the Blazers in the 11 minutes the Valanciunas was on the floor, they got 10 shots inside 5 feet and drew 3 fouls inside 5 feet.
Yeah.
Like that's a ton around there, and that goes against the conceit of kind of some of Denver's theory. Not that it's always the same with their starters and their backups, but it did not go well.
Another thing that I thought was interesting in this one, Denver, usually a very good defensive rebounding team. They were not in this game. They give up 19 offensive rebounds. However, the Portland Trailblazers only had 9 points on those 19 plays. And they actually got 5 offensive rebounds off of offensive rebounds as well. But the Blazers shot 2 of 9 at the rim on their own misses. And some of those are tips, but those usually are not that many. And Donovan Clingan, who is a very good offensive rebounder statistically, and he had
7.
Excuse me?
He had 7 offensive rebounds.
7 offensive rebounds. Yeah, and 3 of those came after an offensive rebound had already happened as well. But he was 1 of 4 at the rim on those plays. And so he just is not capable of putting plays back. He's 2 of 8 from the field, and that's just for a 7-2 center. That's just not good enough. He's not a threat. Having him out really helped the Blazers quite a bit down the end as they started to run more. They started to get to the rim more. And even having someone like Chris Murray, who's not a great shooting threat either, but at least was able to snake along the baseline. I'd like to actually, one thing the Blazers were doing a lot of was when they attacked off the dribble up top, one way they could kind of deal with their lack of spacing was someone would always cut along the baseline as the drive was happening. I thought they even could have found that guy more, but it worked pretty well. So a bunch of things to watch for the Blazers. Your guy Rob was back. How do he look to you?
Okay. Williams played 11 minutes, and they also had dropped Reith at a couple moments at center. Reith could not handle Jokic, but no one really can. I thought that Williams...
They even went with Reith at the 4 and Clingan at the 5 for one period, and that didn't work that well.
It didn't go great.
A couple of open jumpers.
Yeah, and so I thought Robert Williams, coming back from a long absence, I thought he wasn't moving fantastically, but just having somebody who can defend when Clingan is out there. And going back briefly to Clingan, you made some good points on him. On most teams, Clingan's size and his rebounding would be a bigger delta for having him on the floor. But because the Portland Trailblazers have so many other good defenders, they actually don't need as much from their center. I mean, it reminds me of some of the theories that we've seen from Denver and other teams over the years, but Portland has a different approach in terms of attacking the ball and everything else. And so they don't. I was really struck by that during especially when they're doing the 1-2-2 zone. And not only were they doing a 1-2-2, they had Jerami Grant, ostensibly it's him. I think Chris Murray's listed at a bigger height than Jerami Grant. Those two guys were the biggest guys on the floor. Grant was playing at the top. He was the one in the 1-2-2, and they were just, they were making sure that Jokic couldn't get the catch and everything else. And so Portland is unusually able to be dangerous, dynamic defensively without a center on the floor. And that isn't really a lot of shade on Donovan Clingan. It's just they're the unusual team that has the talent to pull that off.
Yeah, and Clingan against teams that do more traditional pick and roll that don't have Nikola Jokic. Like Jokic, some of his best moments came at Klingan's expense when Clingan was just hanging out closer to the rim. Clingan, I think, is better than some people think, challenging shots, but Jokic obviously is a difficult guy to deal with. And yeah, Jokic's activity level is just down, right? Like you would think he's not getting these just quick face cut in front of a guy for a layup type of plays. And he's working his way into the season, and Murray is going well, and Gordon has had some big games. And now, one thing that's a little bit disturbing to me is that Jokic hasn't really been very aggressive, and yet they also are not really getting Cam Johnson that many shots. So I think they really need to try to run more plays for him, or because I think it's for whatever reason he just hasn't been aggressive, hasn't gotten the touches. And let's see here. Yeah, we could probably talk about the end of the game at this point, unless you had anything else.
Before the end of the game, there was an absolutely incredible Jokic pass to Peyton Watson in transition where Jokic caught the rebound. I'm not even quite sure he fully looked and just threw the ball down. It was a little bit slow, but Watson gets in at the finish. That was incredible.
Yeah, when he was like being pressured up, basically like someone was jumping in front of him at a volleyball net, and he still just threw it right over him. And that was the one that Ryan Rupert tried to challenge.
Yes.
That stood out to me, that Ryan Rupert with the 7'2" wingspan was there and just couldn't make that play. Oddly, like he doesn't really play that big. He's better, I think, against smaller guys trying to reach in with that wingspan because he doesn't have a ton of athleticism.
Yeah, sort of like Zaire Williams is better on smaller guys, but not for the same reasons.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. And so I thought Denny Avdia had a really nice game with 23 points. They're mostly just playing within the flow, getting downhill, but also was 2 of 4 from 3. And that's the thing about this game is the Blazers were 11 of 40 from downtown. I thought their looks were generally pretty good, and they also went 19 to 28 from the free throw line. Although Jerami Grant hit some massive ones late, including one that he didn't want to make, hilariously enough, at the end, as we'll get to. But we can pick it up then here in the fourth quarter. And Denver really, I mean, I don't know about you, to me, they felt like they're in control.
I agree.
In the fourth, would you agree? Yeah, so they're, Portland comes back. They go on an 8-0 run to tie it at 94, or get within 2, 96-94. Then Denver was still mostly leading. Drew Holiday hit a step back 3 to give them Portland a brief lead, but still Denver up 5, 156 remaining. Jamal Murray makes a really difficult step back. Then Jerami Grant, this is all stuff at the rim where Jerami Grant gets a pass, not even in transition, just blows the basket, scores on a layup. Then they trap Aaron Gordon near midcourt. Drew Holiday comes over and steals a lazy pass, and Chris Murray tips in his own miss to get him within.
No, he missed both those tips.
Oh, he missed yeah, that's right. He did miss the second one. That was a killer. And then Aaron Gordon make this ridiculous step back. They're up 5 with a minute left. I mean, the Blazers were switching everything. They were squeezing the life out of the offense, and it was Murray and Gordon just making ridiculous shots. They also bailed out Jokic with a couple of fouls as well. So then this was actually, if you look back on it, the key play of the game. Gordon makes this jumper. They should have been in good order, and the Blazers get an and one
running
fast break off a make. Also something that shows up on the new stat site, by the way, running off a makes, because that is basically entirely in your honor that we decided we're going to calculate that and show that, because other sites do not show that. And Cam Johnson fouls him, makes a free throw, so now it's a 2-point game. And it was a pretty interesting situation. 53 seconds left. How much is Denver going to prioritize running the time down? And what ended up happening is they put in Shaedon Sharpe for Chris Murray, which I thought was interesting on a defensive possession, because Chris Murray was someone that they trusted to guard Jamal Murray on a switch. Jokic sees it immediately, just like he saw earlier that they wanted to get Denny Avdia onto Jamal Murray, and Jamal Murray beat him. Jokic basically just told Cam Johnson to go screen for Murray to get Avdia onto Murray so Murray could hit a really difficult step back on him, but Murray didn't really feel Avdia on that play. So they go after Sharpe, get him onto Murray, and then the Blazers decide they're going to double. And so Murray gets off the ball, swings to Christian Braun. He takes it with about 4 on the shot clock. Got to take it there. Misses. And once more, there's a great play made by the Blazers. This time, Toumani Camara flies in among 3 Nuggets, all of whom are going for the offensive rebound in the lane, which up 2 with 30 seconds left. Maybe you want to get back on defense. Camara tips it away. Jrue Holiday gets it. They push it up, and Jerami Grant is fouled by Christian Braun. And David Adelman thought it wasn't a foul?
I guess it was pretty clearly a foul.
Really weird challenge.
It was a weird challenge. It ended up that I don't think that part of it burned them. So that the foul occurred.
No, it absolutely did, Danny.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, I mean, in a couple of ways. Number one, I mean, we'll get to it. I'll give you a couple of times it would have been great for them to have that extra time. He just fired. This is probably the worst challenge this season. I mean, Christian Braun is trying to run back. Jerami Grant slightly changes direction. Christian Braun just like runs across his path, just clips his legs out from under him. It's like an obvious foul. They're up by at this point.
They were up 2
by 2. And yeah, it'd be great to have him not be a foul, but there's 27 seconds left. Like, you're still in a commanding position, but I guess he was like, well, we're just going to run the time down on the last play. We're not going to need a timeout. Jerami Grant has made himself into an unbelievable free throw shooter, and so he makes both free throws. Then I thought this was a ridiculous play by Toumani Camara on the other end.
Oh yeah, I mean, so Cam Johnson drives down, takes a little bit of contact from Jrue Holiday. Johnson was complaining about it. He was complaining. He got contacted twice, but so he does that. And then Toumani Camara just flies over there and blocks the attempt, knocks it out of bounds. And
yeah, and that's how you can get away with what Camara was doing. That's how you can get away with not playing a center in those groups. He flies in for that rebound in the last possession. He gets up to the square and blocks this shot by Cam Johnson that was probably going to go in.
And by the way, Toumani Camara played the entire fourth quarter with 5 fouls. He got his 5th foul with like 10 seconds to go in the third and never got his 6th.
So 6.9 left, about 3 seconds to shoot. And Nuggets take their last timeout and draw up a play. And the Blazers sniff it out and get a deflection, knock it out of bounds again. So now whatever play they're going to run after the timeout doesn't work. What they tried to do was to just basically post up Jokic right at the block, lob it into him. I'm sure he was going to go for the Sombor shuffle. And Toumani Camara bothers him enough and gets a jump ball. What did you think of that jump ball call?
So when I saw it live, I'm like, oh, he fouled him, which I was like, but they're not going to foul on purpose. It's a tie game with 6 seconds to go. But Toumani Camara somehow, despite being smaller than Nikola Jokic, reached around with both arms around Jokic, and from what I could tell on the replay, only got ball. So it's like, it was the correct call.
I mean, I'm sorry. That's a foul. You can't tie someone up cleanly when you are standing behind them and you bear hug around them and also grab the ball with 2 hands. That is a foul. That should have been a foul. Instead, it's a jump ball with 1.4 left. And then it actually gets to Aaron Gordon as Jokic wins it. And Shaedon Sharpe flies out of nowhere to block his turnaround jumper. And that actually turned out to
Was really
be
important.
a big play because it gave them more time. If he gets that shot up and it hits the rim, you're probably basically down under a second. Because it's a shot clock violation, it can only go down to where the shot clock would have expired if it doesn't hit the rim. So 3 seconds left. So Nuggets certainly could have used a timeout after the ball got knocked out of bounds in their first timeout to draw something up. They weren't able to get a shot there. And then they inbound the ball to Jerami Grant up top. He's being guarded by Aaron Gordon. Jokic tries to go double team. Grant rips it through to his right. He's about to go up for a shot. And Aaron Gordon just gets his forearm right into his body and clear foul. Ended up actually being a non-shooting foul, but it's one of those plays where the contact occurs by the defender first, then the guy decides to shoot it, feeling the contact, and it reveals the non-shooting foul that happened beforehand. This used to just be called a shooting foul. Thank God the league changed it. But they're in the bonus. Jerami Grant makes the first. 1.4 left. Clearly, you want to intentionally miss here, right?
Absolutely, because the Nuggets don't have a timeout left. And so the amount of time it takes to kind of corral it, the best you can do is a heave, and you might not even get that heave off.
Yeah, if you miss intentionally. But so he tried to miss it intentionally. He throws it off the backboard. It goes in. Guys, when you want to miss intentionally, don't throw it off the backboard. Just basically aim it 2 balls to the left. Like, just pretend that the left side of the rim is the middle of the basket. And you're never going to make it. It'll just bounce off cleanly. You're not going to get a violation by only hitting the backboard. There's no chance of it going in, really. So that enables Denver to run down. And I was like, oh, Jokic is going to throw the pass. No, they actually had Aaron Gordon throw the pass. Jokic makes the catch somehow at the free throw line. They didn't have much size on him, so he's able to just carve out space. His hands are incredible. I thought that shot was going in.
Oh, yeah. It was, and I mean, there was a surprising miss by him at the end of the game against the Warriors, which would have actually won them the game. Was sort of like that. It's like, oh, he makes this.
Yeah. This wasn't an easy shot, but like, just because of his legend, you're like, oh, this is going in.
And instead, it did not. And so the Blazers get a 109-107 win. And basically, I walked a little bit in the preview yesterday through the implications of Cup group play. And if you basically can, it's technically possible, but you can advance with 2 losses. And so that means that Denver has to win out, including their 3 remaining games are against the Rockets, the Warriors, and the Spurs. So the first of many rough starts for teams that I picked to win their group.
Yeah, so now Blazers only are +2 differential, and Denver is still in control. If they win out, they probably still will win the group, but they got to play the Warriors, Rockets, and Spurs. This may have been their easiest game, you would say. So let's get to now what took place in Memphis. And this is one of those games where the drama that happened after the game was absolutely zero surprise to me. John Morant. Yeah.
You could see it.
Yeah, you could see it. So it was obvious to you as you were watching the game too. I mean, I was tweeting about it. I don't know if you saw that, but it was,
100%. No, it was one of the more surreal situations like this because you could see it, like, especially John Morant. He seemed lethargic. I would say Jaren was out of sorts too, but it's an early season game. It's not like you're playing out the string and you're playing out the string in
don't they know the stakes of the NBA Cup?
But more importantly than that, they were ahead in the game at halftime. They had this big
up 14.
Run. They had this big run at the end of the second quarter, 25-4. Grizzlies run. And so the Lakers get Luka back, but the Grizzlies feedback loops, they got some good stops and were able to get some open shots. KCP hit a couple. He had 12 points. Jalen Wells got a little bit going there. And so they're up and you're like, okay, this is going to be more like the brash Grizzlies like we saw a couple of years ago. And instead, like, John Morant comes out of it like somebody did something terrible to like a loved one at halftime. And just like, what the hell happened? And then afterward, then you got the comments from him afterwards. It's like, I still don't know.
Well, and in the third quarter, LA outscores Memphis 34-22. Luka Doncic was brilliant. But Ja is just not attacking. And he wasn't attacking for the game. He was 3 of 14. He took one shot in the restricted area. And this is everybody else for Memphis is going right to the basket the entire first half. That's how they put up 69 points. They're killing him on the fast break. DeAndre Ayton doesn't come out after halftime due to a back issue. And lo and behold, the Lakers actually started defending. So they're kind of packing the paint. They're switching. Ja gets switched onto by Jackson Hayes and just like passes the ball to Cam Spencer and has them attack. Like, it's just for Ja Morant against a team with this type of rim protection to have one shot at the rim, and he just came out and was absolutely selling for his threes. My guess would be, we'll see if anything more comes out about it, that maybe he was just like told there was some critique of his play that took place at halftime and he just took exception to it. And they're up 14.
I mean, because there was the phrasing from him, Chris Harrington had this about like, it kind of sounded like the coaches don't want me out there or something like that. Like he got something that he took as like unfairly harsh. And
well, we'll give Chris's tweet said, a visibly annoyed Ja Morant said, "Go ask the coaching staff." When asked about what went wrong for him tonight in the midst of a 3 for 14 night, 0 for 6 from 3, 2 free throw attempts, 1 shot at the rim, 7 assists. Asked what the team could have done better, he said, according to them, probably don't play me. Apparently alluding to something that had been said in the locker room. Thomas Isalo actually did his own press availability with nobody there because it was happening at the same time as Morant in the locker room. So nobody was able to ask him about what Morant said. Nobody was able to get his thoughts on the game at all. I'm sure that was probably that was done intentionally by team PR. But I just like whatever they said to John Morant, he needed to hear it. He sucked, and he did not give them what they needed. Everything's falling apart in the third quarter. He's just standing out there shooting threes, going one-on-one against, like, the Lakers are switching anybody onto him. And the reality is that John Morant just isn't that good anymore. Like, if I'm Thomas Isalo, I'm like, look, like, this guy's not that good, right? Like, LeBron James, Luka Doncic, yeah, we're going to bend over backwards for you. If I'm Zach Kleiman, that's what I'm thinking. If I'm Memphis ownership, that's what I'm thinking. That you ran the last coach off the team. You were pissed off about him. Oh, and by the way, you torpedoed basically our entire era of basketball with all this gun bullshit. And then you also just haven't been able to stay healthy. You're not the same player that you were as an athlete. You were this big draw for the league. You're a clear All-NBA player. You're just not that player anymore, even when you are healthy. And now, after we got rid of the coach because you didn't like that he wasn't running enough pick and rolls, even though the system worked pretty well for at least a lot of the year. Granted, it was starting to go poorly, but like I'm not going to say Isalo is like his handpicked guy, but there's just no accountability for this guy. It's ridiculous.
And it hasn't been Ja the whole season. I mean, he was the reason it was a closer game than it should have been. But like in their opener against the Pelicans, like he was huge. He hit big shots. Then some of that was inside the arc. The Pelicans also don't have great rim protection. But the Lakers
he's someone you can give the ball to and like it'll be okay. But he's not that level of guy anymore.
He's not the guy he was. No, not even close. And so it's such a strange situation because Morant. And he hasn't been that player for years now. It isn't like there's a switch that flipped 6 months ago and all of a sudden he's first player. No, it's been multiple years now. Even ignoring, and I brought this up last year a little bit with DeJounte Murray about how his injury, unfortunate as it was, like that obscured with kind of how bad a season he was having. Ja Morant hasn't been the same player irrespective of the gun things that happened, since around that time. Like he was hurt
since 2023. Yeah,
exactly. And so he's been hurt and maybe that's some of the context, but like and he's been dealing with, I believe it's an ankle thing so far this year, but that doesn't seem to be why this was happening. He just like was disengaged.
Well, and Jaren Jackson Jr. was also really disengaged. I don't know if he also had an issue or something happened at halftime. Jaren Jackson Jr. did not take a shot at the rim again against a team that doesn't have amazing guys to guard him, right? And Jaren's second half. Let's see. Let me just make sure that I have this right. Jaren played a bunch of time in the second half. He did hit one shot right at the end in garbage time, but he took 3 shots total. And again, like he's someone who should be assaulting the rim in the half court. And then, all right, so they now have to double team you or load to you, and you can pass out to shooters. And again, it was just so weird. Their entire offense in the second half is Cam Spencer trying to go one-on-one. Jock Landale looking to post up the rim. Jock Landale, by the way, had 4 fouls in this game, and he got them on 4 straight possessions in the the 2 minutes into the third quarter. Those are the only 4 fouls he had, but he fouled on 4 straight possessions. It was unbelievable.
It was a big part of how the Lakers got into the bonus 4 minutes into the third quarter, and that was a part of how they got the 34 in that third quarter. And I think that's in some ways a natural transition to Luka Doncic. So Luka's missed a few games with both a finger issue and a contusion. It was a contusion on his leg.
Yeah, leg contusion. Yeah,
leg contusion. And Luka is a different player because he's not like this dominant vertical or like speed athlete. But I thought he looked pretty close to normal. And I 44 points. 6 assists, and there were a few that, as often happens with Luka and other good passers, where like he created the assist, but then the guy missed the shot, or there was maybe one extra pass, so like he had more value there. And he had some stretches, particularly in the second half, where the Grizzlies just couldn't guard him. Like I thought that Cedric Coward, who had the assignment for stretches of the game, Jalen Wells did too. Like I thought Cedric Coward in particular, like in terms of the mechanics, like there were some of the like lack of familiarity stuff, like he let Luka get to some of his spots, but I thought overall, like Cedric Coward did fine, but Luka, he can make decent or good defense look bad at times. And I thought there were definitely some stretches that Luka 8 of 12 from 2, 10 of 13 from the line. And that's good enough in its own. And when you add in 6 of 15 from 3, then that's a really efficient game.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I thought he could have been even more efficient. I mean, the 44 points is great. Like, he just took some bad threes. Now, granted, Austin Reed's the only other guy who can dribble with this group. And Luka, for all of his brilliance, was actually -2. But I do think he's defending better this season.
Yes.
And then the big thing is just that he's killing in the lane again. Like, if he gets into the lane, he's just going to score. Was 8 of 12 from 2, as you mentioned. And he's getting to his spots. He had 5 turnovers, but again, with this massive usage rate, that's totally fine. They had 13 as a team. So for these super heliocentric guys, I look more at the team turnover rate. As long as they're 5 or below in a game like this, that's totally fine. And played 39 minutes coming back. Not ideal, but hey, it's the NBA Cup. We know the Lakers take it seriously. They hung a banner for it, maybe at the league's behest. It was pretty remarkable, actually, that the Lakers pretty much controlled the second half of this game, despite the fact that Memphis had 13 more true shots. They basically won the possession game by 13, 103-90, and the Lakers still were totally in control. And that's, as we look at the Lakers going forward, like Marcus Smart also came back in this game. He was 4 of 4 from 2. Ja's defense on him was atrocious, right? Like they tried to hide Ja on him. They would just have Luka set the screen and Marcus Smart would just go right to the basket. And then, of course, there was no rim protection from Jaren Jackson either. Jaren Jackson had 0 steals, 0 blocks, and 6 fouls in this one. And 4 defensive rebounds. That's it. So, yeah.
And so, yeah, it was a big disappointment. And I was impressed with JJ Redick. He's done this before, but understanding that to use Luka as a screener, and Luka's not the greatest technician as a screener, even if Nico Harrison doesn't like his heft, but he can do enough. And really typically what you're using a Luka Doncic screen for is as a mechanism to get some sort of a switch. Or, I mean, in certain cases, just let Marcus Smart get loose. And I thought that worked really well. The early part of the game, especially when the Grizzlies had that 25-4 run, one of the things that struck me was how it seemed like the Lakers offense, and this can happen, like they were in a very different flow than they had been the last couple games. And I mean, you add Luka Doncic back to the mix. Austin Reeves had these big scoring performances and on big assist performances when Luka was gone, in part because he had to. And like Austin Reeves was pretty marginalized for a lot of this game. In the non-Luka minutes, he did some big stuff. But
Yeah,
I thought
he was plus 15 and Luka was -2, which is kind of interesting.
And I thought that they got back into that, and really where they kind of found their equilibrium, found their footing in the third quarter was drawing fouls, getting to the line, and that's a part of how they ended up with 33 free throw attempts when the Grizzlies only had 19. And I thought, for the most part, those were earned. They were getting fouled by the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies have long been a reasonably high fouling team, and they were getting to the line and making those shots.
Yeah, Jake LaRavia had another nice game as well with 13 points, 5 of 8. It was interesting how many revenge games there were in this. There's Jake LaRavia, who got his rookie option declined, of course, by Memphis before getting traded to the Kings. Marcus Smart basically got salary dumped. You had KCP on the other side, who the Lakers traded away to get Russell Westbrook. Another move that was not an incredible one. Obviously, they went up against each other in the playoffs a couple years ago. That was a much different group. So those are some interesting themes. But yeah, LaRavia he's good at getting to the basket. He can attack in transition. And the Grizz, again, their effort level was pretty low in this one. But yeah, I think like Marcus Smart playing 35 minutes, that's encouraging for the Lakers. And the Lakers, though, they're not gonna really win the possession game in any way, right? Like they are, and they still have great players, and when LeBron comes back, it'll help. They'll need him in the floor game maybe more than anything. But Reeves, Luka, like these guys are going to kind of control the game, but they're going to kind of go slow. They're not going to beat you in transition. They had 16 points in transition. The Grizz had 29, and they had 9 offensive rebounds. Grizz had 17. They're not really going to force turnovers. The Grizz love to kick the ball over the gym, and yet they had fewer turnovers than the Lakers did. But the Lakers just had such a high skill level. They got to the foul line a ton, and they shot 68% from 2 in this one, and that's how they managed to win it. Like Memphis made it like slightly interesting at the end, but nothing that was particularly concerning for LA. It was a 10-point game throughout most of the fourth quarter.
And so kudos to the Lakers for being the only team in NBA Cup Day 1 that I picked to win their group who actually won their game.
Yeah, the Ayton thing was really weird because he plays 16 minutes in the first. He was terrible, especially as the Grizz go on this run at the end of the second. They're just getting right to the cup. Ayton's not moving. There was one sequence where Santi Aldama got the ball under the rim and just was like throwing up these weak ass layups over his head over and over again. And just, it was Reeves and Luka standing next to him. And then Aldama would just get the rebound again. And Ayton was just standing 17 feet from the rim, just never moved down there. So
I don't know which broadcast you were watching, but there, oh no, sorry. That was in the Bulls game. There was it was about Vucevic and getting hard to the basket, getting fouled. I'm like, no. That's not what's going to happen here. But Ayton is, historically that kind of guy as well.
Right. So they start Jackson Hayes in the second half, and then they went to a switching group, and that really kind of changed the game. And JJ Redick was like, yeah, I'd been sitting for so long, I didn't want to risk it. I was like, you didn't want to risk losing the game by putting him in? Is that what you meant? The Grizz definitely couldn't survive the loss of Ayton in this game. Now, again, he was getting his back worked on, but there was he's still in uniform. He wasn't ruled out. He doesn't even come out of the locker room until well into the fourth quarter. He just wasn't on the bench, and they were still trying to Theragun mini his back. Give him the real Theragun. The mini is just not going to get it done. You need the real one. I have a both. If you got real back pain, need that full Theragun. So Lakers, big win for them in the group. The Clippers are maybe the other favorite in their group, and they barely escaped the New Orleans Pelicans, the winless New Orleans Pelicans at home.
still winless, and this was a ridiculous offensive game. The score was 124-126. That's roughly the offensive ratings. It was 126 and 125. And couple of wild how efficient these teams were offensive stats for this. The New Orleans Pelicans scored 1.5 points per transition play in this game and were outscored in transition by the Clippers, who were 1.65 per transition play. It was
these are some bad transition defenses.
These are some bad transition defenses. So, and now part of it is both teams were 6 for 9 from 3 in transition. You don't expect that to persist, especially for the
other problem too is that the Clippers had a bunch of steals. It was really points off steals, not off of misses, that did in the Pels transition defense.
Oh yeah, the Clippers points off of misses are generally, I mean, they don't have a lot of opportunities. Let's put it that way. They had 8 plays off of misses where they actually ran. The Clippers, this came up, we talked about that game against the Warriors last week. That was this week. Oh my God. But yeah, so I thought this was, this was because of the other games that were going on. It wasn't watching it all the time, but what stuck out most to me was this became late, and it was fun. Because I had this as my second game for most of the late stretch, but then I went back and watched it. It became a version of a mano with Zion Williamson and Kawhi Leonard, though they weren't guarding each other. They didn't really interact at all with each other, but it was Zion going at Zubats on one end and then Kawhi Leonard going at seemingly the whole Pelicans team on the other end.
Well, and the Pels were down by almost 20 mid-third. They come back, make it pretty interesting. Jordan Poole went off in this game. We mentioned that Jeremiah Fears was the starter. Fears actually got the close, and Poole came off the bench. He struggled in their last game, but in this one, he was awesome. And part of it was Zion Williamson attacking off the dribble, but also this is something I've been wanting to see for years, is Zion Williamson used as a role threat. They moved Zion to center because they don't have any good centers on the team, and tried to space out Ivica Zubats, force Zubats to guard Zion, because Zion then started overwhelming the likes of Derek Jones Jr. physically. And then Poole and Zion, with Poole on fire, they had to put 2 on the ball with Poole, and then that released Zion going to the basket, and he was able to make plays. Then he kind of got hot, especially though because part of it was that the Clippers didn't want to give up threes at the end because they were actually up. They're up 7 with 1:12 left because Kawhi was just absolutely killing Trey Murphy since they had Herb Jones on James Harden. This is a perfect example. I've been saying this for a long time, and Trey Murphy's, 3-and-D wing. It's like, no, you put him in an isolation against Kawhi Leonard, and Kawhi Leonard is going to score like 80% of the time. Like, you're not a 3-and-D wing. He's an okay team defender. He's not really any good getting through screens either, but he just is not strong enough to impact the best guys at this position. And so Kawhi just absolutely lit him up down the end. Looked like Clippers are totally in control after James Harden throws a beautiful behind the back pass out of a trap to Zubats, and Zubats hits Derek Jones Jr. for one of the highlights of the season, going along the baseline for a righty floating dunk behind the backboard. And then the Pels somehow got back into it with multiple Clippers mistakes, I thought, down the end.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, that started with a Zion and 1 at Zubats' expense. So that cut it. So with about a minute left, that cut it from a 7-point deficit to a 4-point deficit.
You just can't foul in that situation up 3 possessions. If they're willing to take a 2 there, you're in great shape.
Yeah, you basically
up 5 with the ball is so much different than up 4 with under a minute to go.
And so I had this note, rewatching it, and I'm like, Harden isn't touching the ball at all. They're big. Kawhi's just running the show, and I mean Kawhi's killing them every single time. So why would James Harden touch the ball? And then so I'm like, what's gonna happen here? And then, James Harden did touch the ball in the possession after Zion's and 1. He touches it and he airballs a 3. And so that isn't really a threat.
But he did run the time down. They're still up 4 with 35 seconds left. Pels don't take a timeout to try to get the 2-for-1. And Jordan Poole takes a 3. James Harden fouls Sadiq Bey in the rebounding action. If they get that rebound, the game is over. And they're in the bonus, so Sadiq Bey makes 2 free throws, and now it's a 2-point game. And then Kawhi Leonard pulls a game 1 of the Denver series. Jeremiah Fears, of all guys, just strips the claw. The claw is starting to get arthritis or something, I think, because he's not like impossible to steal the ball from anymore. Knocks it out of bounds off Kawhi in a transition play. Good job by the Pels not fouling and forcing a trap. And it was a really weird lineup out there for I didn't really understand some of the subs that they went to at the very end on this Kawhi jumper that won it. But after the Kawhi turnover, Pels take a timeout and they put Zion Williamson on the right side of the floor. Clippers announcers like, he's going left, he's going left, he's going left, which he was, and he was still scoring on Zubats anyway. It was interesting. I wasn't, Zion, what did he shoot for the game? Because he was dominant at the end, but I don't know what to make of it because they were down and like kind of trying to give up twos.
He was 9 for 17 from the field overall.
Yeah, but he was dominant late, and he was going at Zubats and going left. This time, Zubats decided he wasn't going to let him go left. They didn't want to give up a 3 because they were up 2, and Zion goes right, gets fouled, and makes both free throws. So Zion making key free throws down the end, ties it. And then, totally weird lineup. They put in Chris Dunn, and they also had Derek Jones Jr. out there. And somehow they didn't have any timeouts left. They end up with not the ball in neither James Harden nor Kawhi Leonard's hands. Derek Jones Jr. is trying to push it up against pressure. Kawhi somehow goes to the ball, gets inside the arc on the left side, and it's a crazy shot. I thought when I saw that he had hit a game winner that it would be a play where he just ran the time down and like got an easy look. This is a great shot by him to save the Clippers' destiny in the NBA Cup, because losing to New Orleans would have meant they were done.
And so we have it. Kawhi Leonard's overall line for the game: 34 points on 11 of 16 from the field, 6 of 8 from 2, 5 of 8 from 3, 7 of 7 from the line, 5 assists, 6 steals. And I thought in the early part of the game, Kawhi, he looked more disruptive defensively than I had seen from him in any of the Clippers I've watched this year. So that was good to see, and that was borne out by the steals total. And so, it was a dominant performance from him, especially in that fourth quarter run.
Yeah, it was also pretty interesting, the closing lineup. Willie Green has been doing some kind of weird stuff. Like, he actually, when Trey Murphy was getting lit up, he took him out for Sadiq Bey for defensive purposes on a couple of possessions to guard Kawhi, but like still left Jeremiah Fears out there, which was just kind of odd to me. It's not like
rewarded
really
with that steal.
Yeah, no, he was. I mean, and Fears did have 4 steals and 8 assists. Like, I think he's going to end up by the end of the year not shooting it very well. He actually was 2 of 9 from 2. Ivica Zubats will do that to teams, by the way. So yeah, Pels, I mean, they've been competitive in, I think, 3 of their 5 losses, but they just haven't been able to get over the hump. And things are, at least this is a reasonable performance by them, but they don't really have the injury excuse anymore. Like, they got Yves Missi back. Like, really, Looney is the only key guy who's out for them right now.
Yeah, and I mean, the Pels is starting to look like another lost season that we'll have to see. Congratulations to the Hawks for having their pick.
They're at least watchable. Watchable.
They're much more competitive than they were in some of those junctures last year. And just to set the table for Group B, there's still a lot of basketball to be played, but it is looking like it's going to be Lakers versus Clippers, which is the second to last game of West Group B for both teams for the group, because now, even though the Pelicans and Grizzlies lost somewhat close, they're both lost 1 game, so they have to be perfect the rest of the way. And then the Mavericks just aren't playing well enough right now to do it.
Yeah, Anthony Davis is going to be out for them for at least a little bit with a low-grade calf strain. This is after he was already dealing with his bilateral Achilles.
Yeah.
Soreness. None of that sounds amazing.
Who would have thought that Nico Harrison would trade for an somewhat overweight player who's dealing with a calf strain?
Yeah, well, maybe now with this calf strain, AD can take a little break and get himself into shape, lose the weight. right? The Mavs have ever done that before. They kind of know that playbook, right?
Also note, since we're talking about Mavs injuries, D'Angelo Russell questionable for their game against the Pistons on Saturday with a left knee contusion. So and Lively's definitely out, and Gafford's I think questionable. So it seems like they're going to be extremely shorthanded.
Yeah, that game is in Mexico City. I need to go to that game at some point because I've actually never been to Mexico City. I need to make that happen. Speaking of the Pelicans, they in almost all likelihood traded away last offseason 2 lottery picks because the Pacers are just
That's
a
right.
disaster. They fell apart at home. They were in it through a half, and they only had 17 points in the third quarter. The Trae Youngless Hawks. We haven't still, I think, gotten an official diagnosis on Trae. I wasn't fully plugged in today, so
I haven't seen it. No, we have not seen it. And so his MRI was allegedly on Thursday, and we have not heard anything about the results. And they've played a game since then, which I don't love. But yeah, tough game for the Pacers. They had their offense wasn't moving. I mean, they started Quentin Jackson at point guard, and then they got some of Talon Peter, who was available, and Mac McClung. They also got some rough injury news where we knew that Obi Toppin was dealing with a foot issue. He will have surgery on Monday, and Rick Carlisle said not to ask about Obi Toppin until February 1st.
Yeah, well, if he's having, it's a 5th metatarsal stress fracture, and this was one of those things where they just said he was dealing with some lower body injury, but he was going to try to play through it, and then he had to leave that game. I think that was against Minnesota, but it would appear that he played on a broken foot. Or at least a stress reaction that then became a broken foot. And so that's, I mean, I realize that they're trying to actually just power through in whatever way they could, but yeah, this is looking like the year from hell for the Pacers so far, despite the fact that Pascal Siakam is playing well. He finally actually crashed back to earth in this one too, and balanced scoring for Atlanta, led by Jalen Johnson. Nickeil Alexander-Walker was very solid for them in the
other notable
point guard role.
Yeah, other notable thing for the Hawks, Jalen Johnson leading them in scoring by a little bit and in assists. We'll see how the offense fall. I want to watch them more closely over the next few games to see how this is going to work without Trae. Hopefully at some point we'll get an injury designation for him. We can finish out the West because we've talked about all the other West games with.
Right. Yeah, I forgot there was another West game we had to talk about. That was
I at one point I was
eager to talk about that lottery pick.
I was excited for Suns Jazz, and it ended up just became a blowout early. The Jazz did make it a game briefly in the fourth quarter, but Phoenix had a 37-17 lead at the end of the first quarter. They were dominating inside the arc. They were making basically all of their twos in the early going. And what I noticed in the portions of this game I watched was that the Jazz were a little bit late on their help. Like they were just, and they play a lot of young guys. They were just so they were giving up too much penetration. It's not like they play a dominant defensive guard rotation. And then there just wasn't enough of a response. And so the Suns were eating a lot on the inside, that whether it was like in transition or like Devin Booker getting downhill. And so that was really fundamental. And then Lauri Markkanen only had 5 points, I believe, in the first quarter, but he ended up with 33. So he got over that threshold again. And he's had this big stretch to start the year. And I thought he, again, when I watched it, he looked pretty good physically. Got to the line 12 times, which is another thing to monitor.
Yeah, the Suns finally are starting Mark Williams now. Ryan Dunn actually played a lot more. And yeah, there's just a pretty ugly game for the Jazz. Their bench groups, like Keontae George was +3 in 33 minutes, and they lost by 22. Walter Clayton was -22 in 9 minutes. But anyway, enough box score reading. Let's move on to the Eastern Conference and the game of the day in the East, Danny. Bulls versus Knicks. And the Bulls really took care of business pretty well in this game. They looked unstoppable, at least against this Knicks defense, despite the fact that the Knicks got back Mitchell Robinson in this one.
The Bulls were up 22 in the second quarter, and they did give up half that lead in like the first couple minutes of the third quarter, but they ended up holding firm, got a 135-125 win. And put up a little bit under 140 offensive rating against the New York Knickerbockers, which is pretty damn impressive for them overall. It helps when you hit 46% of your threes and you take 37 of them, 17 of 37, including 4 of 8 from Josh Giddey and 4 of 8 from Vucevic. And so yeah, they were effective overall. And it wasn't Buzelis getting to the line. Josh Giddey actually working on this for the 1560. He is getting to the line a lot still. He was 4 of 6 there. Yeah. So and I mean, Vooch took 5 free throws. That's more than he usually gets. So I thought it was an impressive performance from the Bulls. First time they've been 5-0 in 30 years.
Yeah, the Knicks started Karl-Anthony Towns and Mitchell Robinson together, but due to the minutes limit for Mitchell Robinson, they were only able to play 7 minutes together, and they were plus 13 in those 7 minutes. And then with either one of them on the floor without the other, it was really ugly because they lost by 10 in this game. And really, the Bulls' offense looked great against the Knicks. Karl-Anthony Towns was absolutely atrocious in pick and roll defense in this game. They've got him playing in a drop, and they're just Nikola Vucevic really abused him when the Bulls totally put things away in the fourth. Vucevic, who was 4 of 8 from 3, then had Towns running out at him, and then was able to blow by him and make plays a number of times. Towns just had another number of other plays where he was just sort of in no man's land, not really in a drop, totally stood up, like ramrod straight, not getting his hands low, not sliding his feet. So he was not really impacting the ball handler, but also not on the angle between the passer and the roll man, nor was he staying below the roll man. He was just absolutely in the middle of nowhere. Ayo Dosunmu looked like he sprained his ankle later on, but he was devastating getting to the basket. The Knick rim protection was horrible. Dosunmu was 7 of 7 in the paint, 6 of 6 at the rim, and also got fouled 3 times at the rim and had 9 assists. He's been looking really good this season. Yeah. Hopefully this foot issue is not going to be anything.
Dosunmu averaging 15 points a game and 25 minutes a game coming off the bench. He has had some really nice stretches and did a lot of it in this game. You said it was driving, it was inside the arc. He was 7 of 7.
Yeah, I just said that.
Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah,
and
but the way he's doing it is and the way the Bulls just move the ball quickly. This has been a way that they've used in the last couple of years because he's such a physical driver, and he's gotten even some more tricks. Like he's improved his floater. Like he used to just be this Dennis Schroeder, go really hard right, get to the corner of the backboard. Now he can also like do the ball over move, and he's not necessarily going to finish with his left hand, but he'll at least do a Euro step, kind of going left, but still shoot a little righty floater. So he just was very fast and very physical, and the Knicks just didn't have anyone who could stay in front of him because the Bulls move the ball so quickly. And the Knicks, like the way the Bulls play offense is exactly what the Knicks don't want to do, right? The Knicks, they got Mikal Bridges, they got OG Anunoby. They don't really have anyone else who's particularly great on defense. Miles McBride's okay, but it's like many of these guys, as soon as he learned how to play offense, he's not as good on defense anymore. You've got Jordan Clarkson, Landry Shamet, and Josh Hart is just struggling physically. He had no impact whatsoever. You got Jalen Brunson, and so the Bulls are moving the ball quickly. They're forcing switches, and none of these guys are premium creators. But Josh Giddey going downhill against someone who can't guard him, Dosunmu going downhill against someone who can't guard him, and then Vucevic spacing the floor for them really, really well. He's been their most important player these last 2 years to me, and the Bulls are doing a great job of pushing in transition. They're doing a great job of shooting the 3 ball. Like they have guys who are making shots now. Kevin Huerter has had a renaissance there. So this matchup against the Knicks, especially when the Bulls were hitting shots, is actually a really good one for the Chicago offense.
And the Bulls have largely this year, part of their success has been incredible opponent shooting luck. That was not the case in this game. No. The Knicks were 18 of 25, 40%. Sorry, 18 of 45 from 3, 40% from long range. There was a stretch in the fourth quarter where Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby were getting pretty clean looks from corner 3. And
let me elaborate on that, actually, because the Bulls' strategy with Vucevic in particular is that they're just going to pack the paint and they're going to help a lot one pass away. And so Or if you do a little like 21 handoff on the side, they're just going to go under that. And so Anunoby was open; he was getting corner threes. Bridges was, but they're willing to ultimately live with that because they were winning every other facet of the game. And yeah, you know what? The Knicks had a 128 offensive rating, but the Bulls had a 138 offensive rating. And also the fact that the Bulls play the way they do, running that fast and moving the ball as much as they do, and constantly slipping to the basket and throwing a lot of good passes. They had 31 assists in this game and only had 7 turnovers. That is a massive indictment to me of the Knicks defense, that they're just not feeling them in any way.
Josh Giddey, I have a couple of things. Josh Giddey, 1 assist away from a good game, 32 points, 10 rebounds, 9 assists, and getting downhill. He did hit his threes in this one. I thought he looked very good overall. Trey Jones, 8 points, all on free throws. He was 0 for 4 from the field, but he had 3 assists, didn't turn the ball over. They were pretty much even in his minutes. And the Bulls, you brought up how the Towns plus Robinson minutes were good. All of the Bulls reserves were +9 or better in the time they played. And the one it was +9 with Julian Phillips, that was mostly garbage time. But like Jalen Smith, Patrick Williams, who had a bad miss late, but was still still out there for some significant stretches.
He's actually playing, to me, the most winning basketball of his career right now. And so their bench, I mean, Bobby Marks has been tweeting this stat out. Their bench has been scoring like 40, 50 points a game every game.
And they did that again on Friday night.
Yeah, Jalen Smith also, remember, this happens a fair number of times where a guy will be signed and then they traded for Zach Collins. He moved ahead of him in the rotation. The Smith signing was kind of a disappointment, but he's enabling them to play 48 minutes of 5-out basketball, and that really helps a lot. Isaac Okoro starts, but he's actually the one guy who's not shooting it well at the moment. And so I think that's part of why he's not playing very much. He was -11 in 16 minutes. So I think he might have even gotten the Keith Bogans in the house that Keith built, in fact, Danny. But Jalen Smith, he was 2 of 4 from 3, but he also was effective slipping to the rim and making plays around the basket a couple of times too. He's playing into the system pretty well, bringing actually maybe some of the principles that he learned in Indiana under Rick Carlisle. So he's giving them effective play. And again, the Knicks, this Knicks bench, I mean, Jordan Clarkson might be done. Especially if Hart is, I don't think he should start, but he's still a very important player for them. And if he's not able to really affect the game from an effort standpoint, they just don't have other guys who do that. And only getting 15 minutes out of him really hurts. And I think that's part of why this game did not have the intensity that we've come to expect from an NBA Cup game, because the Knicks aren't really capable of playing that way right now.
It is a pretty stark change, but I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think we can move on to the other Atlantic division teams that played on this night. Actually, sorry, there's a fourth one after that we'll talk about. Celtics Sixers, and this was nearly another Boston Celtics blown lead to the Philadelphia 76ers that already happened this year. The Celtics were, for most of the fourth quarter, they were hovering between like a 5 and a 9-point lead, and then they go up 108-98 on a Jaylen Brown 3, and they then score 1 point in the final 3:11. Philly actually, they get it. They tie the game, or sorry, they get within 1. Maxey makes it 2, and then they lose the ball for a turnover. And basically, the Sixers have a chance. They have 2 chances to potentially take the lead, and it just doesn't happen for them. Their luck ran out after these other wild comeback wins. They fall a little bit short in the cup.
And Boston way outplayed Philly for most of this game. The
Yes.
biggest way in which they did so was 106 true shots to 89. They only had 9 turnovers, and Philly had 18. Philly has really been thriving on turning teams over.
Turnovers are a part of it, but for me, the biggest one, and I brought this up a few days ago when we were talking about Joel Embiid, Philly's defensive rebounding in this game was abysmal. They were especially in the late stretch of the game. The Celtics were like they weren't even like, those really getting all the fluky 50-50 balls. They were just beating the Sixers to the spot every time. But remember what Nick Nurse is going to, in part because of guys that are unavailable. So they don't have Don Barlow available. Jabari Walker only played 11 minutes in this game. So what they're primarily doing in crunch time is they're playing Joel Embiid. Well, it wasn't Embiid in most of the other games. It was Dembona. And then they're playing 4 perimeter guys. So they're playing Oubre at the 4, Maxey, Edgecombe, and Quentin Grimes. And so they just have no size out there. And so Boston, not the biggest team in the world, team that has the worst center rotation in the league, second worst center rotation in the league. They are just
right. Who's the worst at this point?
Well,
Pels?
Yeah, Pels. And then Charlotte might have moved past them.
Hey, Ryan Kalkbrenner is having the best shooting start to a career in NBA history right now. So we will not crap on the Charlotte Hornets center rotation for
Dunc'd Prime subscribers. Well, Dan Feldman has done great work on this. That he probably will go under this in their game on Saturday, but he's out at 90% so far. Nobody's ever been there that far, so he has to do 90% or better against the Wolves to keep that going.
Yeah, no player has ever shot 90% or better this far into any season, not to mention an NBA debut. So back to Boston, the 20 offensive rebounds were solid. It was distributed well throughout the team. One guy who actually stood out to me and I thought helped them a lot with his hustle was Hugo Gonzalez, who had gotten a couple of spot starts for them. Only played 14 minutes. He also took a knee to the groin from Joel Embiid while delivering a 3-shot foul to Embiid, which ended up not being a flagrant or anything. So that wasn't great. But before that, he really, and I'm not sure if that's why they took him out after that, but he had 3 offensive rebounds, really was hustling, 2 steals, just was getting on the floor, inspiring the team. There are a few like kind of Guy Santos vibes to him a little bit. I think he's got more ball skills and more physicality than Santos, and Santos can't guard anyone one-on-one. Where
I think Gonzalez can move better. Yeah,
when he was in, they actually had him as the primary matchup against Tyrese Maxey, and I thought he held his own reasonably well. He cut him off a couple of times. Now Maxey, and the other thing you can point to, the Sixers did come back late to make this look a little bit better, but Tyrese Maxey played 43 minutes and 38 seconds and was plus 10, and they lost by 1. Like, what is this? The 2019 playoffs with Joel Embiid? And Joel did close. What did you make of his performance in this one?
He's still not moving great, especially on kind of in the defensive space. I talked about this the last time we did a Sixers game, but I thought he was a little bit more assertive inside the arc. He only took 2 3-pointers, but he did get to the line. Joel Embiid can do that. So I thought he was okay. I didn't think he was great.
So here's a wild stat for you. Joel played 25 minutes. This is his overall stat line. In the full game, Joel had 20 points in 25 minutes. Xavier Tillman played 12 minutes and 54 seconds. All of that while Joel Embiid was on the floor. Would you care to guess how many points of those 20 Joel Embiid scored in the 13 minutes he was matched up against Xavier Tillman?
6.
3. He was 0 of 5 from the field, 0 of 5 on 2s, and I think the only 3 points he got was that Gonzalez
the 3-shot foul
on him. And so that meant that when Tillman was off the floor, Joel had 17 points in 12 minutes and drew 6 fouls. Did have 4 turnovers during that period, but that was Neemias Queta got the start, and I think Joe Mazzulla is like, Xavier Tillman actually is moving better. He is a problem on offense. Like, basically the way they used him on offense, he scored 2 baskets, but the way they would use him was he would set the screen for the first guy, and this is a big part of Boston going crazy early, was that they were just eating coming off of screens. Their guards were just shooting threes or getting in the mid-range and scoring really easily. Peyton Pritchard was awesome for mid-range in the first half. But what they started doing is Joel would then just get up Because remember, Joel is on the floor guarding Tillman for every second that he's out there. Joel would get up a little bit more. The ball handler would drive off the pick, throw it back out to Tillman at the arc. He did actually attempt 1-3 and or sorry, 3 threes. He made one of them. But generally, Tillman would be at the arc, and then he would just go to look to hand off to the next shooter and set a screen for him before Joel could get back out there again. It actually worked okay a few times. But that was kind of that's really like all he can do on the offensive end. But I mean, he's a modern day Jason Collins. I don't know if that was before your time, Danny, but
Oh no, I know Jason.
Yeah, so Jason Collins would do absolutely nothing on offense every game, and everyone thought he sucked, but yet his plus minus was unbelievable. And this is back when post defense mattered more, rebounding mattered more, it's starting to matter again. So he was actually a really positive player for the Nets, but everyone was just calling for his head because the plus minus data was just barely becoming in people's consciousness at that time. Anything else you had on this one?
Anthony Simons was plus 23 and had 19 points, but he had those 19 points on 21 shots, 22 shooting possessions. So I thought, they needed somebody to take those to generate those looks. I thought he looked fine, but it was, the point total is overstating it a bit, even though he was important.
Yeah, because he was 7 of 21. But I thought he looked good getting to his shot. He was getting good looks. Him being plus 23, they just needed him to generate some shots. I like the effort level of Luka Garza. I don't know how many minutes he can play at that level of intensity, but he was +5 coming off the bench again. They tried to avoid matching him up with Embiid. And Jaylen Brown is continuing a really nice start to the season. He was 13 of 19 from the field and also 4 of 7 from 3. I think he struggled to shoot it last year. Like, oh, is he like not a good shooter anymore? Well, he was dealing with this knee issue. And I think also because they had so many threats last year, the fact that he knows he's just going to keep getting the ball and he'll just keep having chances. I think for the way his mindset works, there's just a lot less pressure on some of these 3-pointers when it's not just, I have to make this as a spot up guy. The team is counting on me versus like, I am generating the shot. The defense is giving it to me. I'm going to take it. Or if I wanted to, I don't have to take it. I can keep going to the basket. There's just, when you're going to get so many looks, when players talk about getting into a rhythm, I think he's one of these guys where the more he feels the orange, the more comfortable he gets out there.
Jaylen Brown on the season, 66.5% true shooting on 32 usage.
That's including tonight?
Yes.
Yeah, and he had 5 of their 9 turnovers, but again, that was they only had 9 as a team.
And this will come up in the 15 and 60. Boston now 3-0 since they began starting Josh Minott.
Yeah, though Josh Minott was almost the GOAT. He missed two free throws at the end. I don't think we need to talk about the end of the game that much. No. It was Boston just missed a bunch of free throws and had a turnover. They almost got tricked this one away. So let's turn to our next game. The
last game on the slate, and it would have been a more exciting game were it not for both Jared Allen would do the finger issue we previously talked about, and Donovan Mitchell with this hamstring issue, both missing this game for the Cleveland Cavaliers.
It was a little weird to me that Mitchell played like the way it went through on Wednesday. He's a late add to the injury report. Questionable. Then he goes through a warm-up. He tells Chris Fedor he's fine. He plays. They get totally blown out. And now 2 days later, he's not playing? That doesn't sound like great process to me.
It doesn't appear that way. And so this really was an offensive loss / an offensive loss for the Cavs and a defensive win for the Toronto Raptors, who deserve a lot of credit. And the Cavs, they're lead initiators in this game. Lonzo Ball, to an extent, secondary was Jalen Tyson, and then the bench units, they had Craig Porter Jr. and Tyrese Proctor out there a fair amount. They just weren't generating enough good shots. That led to Evan Mobley doing a lot in his shoulders, and the self-created stuff for Evan Mobley, I thought actually went pretty well, 11 of 17 from the field, but Mobley kind of generating for others, that stuff didn't go quite as well. The Cavs, they also missed a bunch of free throws. They were 15 to 23. If that goes a little bit better, maybe things look good. And so that gave the Raptors the platform to do a couple things. One of them was get out a little bit more in transition. They weren't incredibly effective, but they were able to do some stuff. The Raptors were actually far more effective in half-court offense than they were in transition, but that's just, missing some shots. And so I thought Toronto's their defense, despite not playing a traditional center, Jakob Poeltl's still out, was impressive. And I brought this up a little bit earlier in the podcast, but with the Blazers, but like this Raptors team has a lot of length and they play hard, and they were able to generate not only some turnovers, but some steals. And so I thought that they, so saying it's an offensive loss for the Cavs, certainly it is, but it's also a defensive win for the Raps.
Would you care to guess whether 12 3-point attempts is a career high for DeAndre Hunter?
I don't think it is.
It is tying his career high set on Wednesday against the Celtics.
Amazing.
3-12. And he's 4-12 from 3 in this game. Yeah, the Cavs, it's been a struggle. Obviously, Darius Garland is supposed to be back relatively soon, apparently. That will help them some, but again, they really are missing Ty Jerome. You wondered whether this machine that was totally fine with guys out last year would be able to continue, and no, like Craig Porter Jr. has not been able to step in there. They started Lonzo. He played 25 minutes, but he's still not playing back-to-backs. They were positive in his minutes, and they got destroyed in other minutes. And you mentioned the bench stuff. Colin Murray-Boyles started. He was well into the negative at actually -16. They started him at center because Jakob Poeltl is disturbingly out with this back issue. But what really won them the game was going with Scotty Barnes at center. So they played 20 possessions with Scotty Barnes at center, 9 minutes and 24 seconds, and scored 33 points. Cavs only had 19. So they're plus 14 in those 9 minutes. And that's either Barnes at center and Ingram at the 4, or they even went with Jamison Battle,
who was huge.
And he was huge.
Yeah, Jamison Battle, 6 for 6 from 3, 20 points in 15 minutes. And he isn't the greatest defensive player, but if he's hitting those open shots, it makes life a lot easier for the Raptors offensively, because they don't make a ton of those. They don't always generate a ton of them. So I thought that was really important. And I was watching on the Raptors feed, and something their announcers fixated on, which was a very good point, was that it looked like at that point, that juncture, that the Cavs, when going into the fourth quarter, was a close game, then they would really need a lot from Evan Mobley in the fourth quarter. And Kenny Atkinson, very, very good coach, made the decision, because Mobley had played a fair amount of minutes. At that point, I think he played about 30 minutes in the game so far, to sit Mobley for most of the first, to sit him for a stretch of the fourth quarter. And during that stretch, that's really when the Raptors took control. And it's a challenging question for any coach of how do you want to handle this when you have a guy who's really important, but also you want to get them some rest, because without Jared Allen, basically he's the only one of the core 4 that was available in this game. And so it's a difficult situation, but it is one that, that didn't end up working out for them, whether it was the right decision or not.
Yeah, Mobley plays most of the beginning of the fourth quarter, and then when he's out, that's when the Raps basically scored 8 straight points and took relative control of the game by the time he got it. And they played him 35 minutes, and he had a big load, and he also got to play, for a big man to play more than 35 minutes, especially with his defensive load as well. He's the only true center who's available for them at this point. I mean, unless you want to count Thomas Bryant, who was ineffective. So, yeah, I mean, I think Kenny Atkins is like, look, we're not going to have Evan Mobley punch himself. I didn't consider this a particularly impressive win for the Raptors, given all of the absences for Cleveland. But it definitely is looking like it's going to be a different kind of season for Cleveland. I would certainly pick the under on their 59 wins because they had a lot of health guys, and those health guys are healthing right now. Mm-hmm. So what about the implications for this group?
The Raptors winning puts them in some real control. Just so we can walk through, the other teams in East Group A are the Hawks, who beat the Pacers, as we talked about before, and the Wizards. So if the Raptors can beat the Hawks, that's the next game for both of those teams in the Cup. Then they will really be in the catbird seat because they have Washington and Indiana. Now, and the other thing is Atlanta winning big. They're plus 20. The Raptors are plus 11. So since the Raptors don't have to play the Cavs again, the Cavs will probably be closer to full strength when they play the Hawks. Like, they're in pretty good position now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really believing in them overall to actually take advantage of that, but because I think this is, and without Pirtle too, I think a lot of the theory of their team and their defense is not great. This Cavs group is very limited. If you look at some of the guys that they're playing with,
For sure.
Craig Porter, Luke Travers, Tyrese Proctor, Thomas Bryant. I mean, none of those guys are established NBA rotation players. Larry Nance even probably shouldn't be playing 20 minutes as your only center off the bench as well.
Oh,
all right then.
We should catch up on a couple of quick pieces of news before we go.
Good idea.
Especially because we're so J-Dub Jalen Williams, he had a follow-up procedure to remove a screw in his right wrist. He will be reevaluated in about 2 weeks. We'll see how long.
Well, by the way, that wasn't supposed to happen. It was irritating him, and now they're taking it out. So this was I don't know that anyone did anything wrong. It just can happen. But I think he was pretty much supposed to be ready. At least they have an understanding of why he was still dealing with some pain. So hopefully this will enable him to get back. But you imagine if he's having another surgery, it's going to be at least a few weeks.
And the Thunder are still undefeated as we record this podcast. Couple pieces of surgery that are going to happen. Matisse Thybulle, 4 to 6 weeks after tearing a ligament in his left thumb. So
another
he'll be out
one of these. That's insane. How many people have? So that was in the Wednesday win over the Jazz.
And in phrasing that I know you will love, Kevin Porter Jr., unfortunately for him, is undergoing a minor arthroscopic procedure, otherwise known as knee surgery.
Well, that's a shame for him. I've been speculating on whether Ryan Rollins, who was absolutely ridiculous last night in a revenge game against Golden State, would take his job going back to the Knicks game that the Bucks also won. And now, especially if Porter Jr. is going to be out for a while, he suffered this injury during a workout on Thursday. Yeah, I mean, minor arthroscopic procedure that will sign him for 4 weeks. Okay. When do you think he's actually going to be back, right? And not only that, it's a little weird to me that it happened on Thursday, and now we already know he's going to have surgery. If it really were that minor, because not every meniscus injury requires surgery. Like it's still kind of a sliding scale. Like I have a tear in my meniscus right now. My knee swells up sometimes. Probably not worth having surgery. I'm not a professional athlete, but there are plenty of professional athletes who have that on a scan. So if they want to say it's minor, remember, of course, he's going to be a free agent at the end of the season. They can call it minor. They can say 4 weeks. I mean, shit. A lot of times, if they say 4 weeks, that's what goes into the consciousness. Even if he ends up missing 8 weeks, people will be like, oh yeah, it was a minor. It's 4 weeks. So now the fact that they are going in for a surgery right away, it's like it's obvious he needs surgery. Like it's a tear of some significance, right? If it was really that small, they would maybe try to rehab it or whatever. Now, maybe the thought is just you can't do it, but yeah, obviously it's not a repair that's going to keep him out the whole season. So yeah, I mean, it looks like Ryan Rollins starting point guard. Man, I mean, we can pat ourselves on the back for this one, that the league totally blew it on him as a restricted free agent. Letting him go back to the Bucks for $4 million a year was just like, why? Like a team should have offered him high single digits. I even would have considered offering him the middle exception, honestly. But the market is really chilled. You can't offer guys this amount of money. It's like, well, not every team is like that. Okay, that will do it for us tonight, and we'll be back on Sunday. First 15 and 60 is the plan this season.